Hi friends, welcome back to Sarah Vlogs Thoughts, and today we are going to be doing a June reading wrap-up. I won't even lie to you, this is the fourth time I've tried to film this video, so hopefully the fourth time is the charm. So, in the month of June, I read 14 books. I read 6 of these on audio, 3 of them in print, 4 of them on ebook, and 1 on audio and print book. It's a long story. We'll get to it when we get there. I also, on June 9, completed my Goodreads yearly reading goal of 50 books, which would not have happened if there wasn't a pandemic, but there was, and now I've finished it. So that's cool. I'm reading a lot of books, so that's pretty awesome. And to go through this list of books, I have, my list in front of me, and I'm going to go through them in the order that I read them, and we're just going to talk about each of them just a little bit. And that's the thing. Let's do it. So the first book I read this month was Stamped from the Beginning, The Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America by Ibram X. Kendi. This is a book that I thought was incredibly important. It had been on my radar for a couple of years. My friend had recommended it to me, said this was a really important read, and it had gone through my holds a couple of times, but I think I was having trouble picking it up while I was in school and wanting to escape kind of like academic kind of reading. And so now that I've graduated, I picked this one up. What I loved about this book is it defined American history through the lens of racist ideas. And it did, in that framework, it talked about racist ideas, thoughts, and policies, assimilationist ideas, thoughts, and policies, and anti-racist ideas, thoughts, and policies. And I thought that was a really interesting framework, and it really provided a new perspective to a lot of the American history that we're taught and that we're not taught as students in the US. And I thought this was incredibly good. It's definitely dense. There's a lot of information here, but it is a good listen, a really important listen, and I would highly, highly recommend it. The next book I read was something completely different. It was The Art of Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker by Phil Shostak, this is a book I gave 3 stars. I read the print coffee table book, which, let me tell you, they smell so good. These books smell great, but aside from that, I really love the Art of the Star Wars XYZ movie books because they provide a bit of the process of the movie making, and also there's typically some beautiful, beautiful art in them, some really interesting designs that you wish had been in the movie. And that did not change in this book. There was some beautiful art, there were designs I wish were in the movie, but I gave this one 3 stars because if you know me, you know that The Rise of Skywalker is not my favorite movie. It is also not my second favorite movie or my third favorite movie. I don't love it. So that might have contributed to the low rating, but I also thought that the book kept out a lot of the cooler things from the movie, like the design on Exegol. There was really no Exegol. There was no Palpatine. There was very little overall of Ben and Rey. There was a bit of them on like the dark side sitting on the throne, which I thought was kind of cool, but not enough for me to be like, ooh, I want to keep flipping the pages to keep seeing the art. It felt very repetitive and the same kinds of designs of droids and background characters, and while that stuff is cool and I really do like it, I really wanted to see some of the more meaty plot design, and specifically that of Exegol, which those statues that are really tall. So cool, so interesting. I wanted to know more about that. So not my favorite of the Art of books. The next book I read was Tweet Cute by Emma Lord. I gave this book 4 stars, and I listened to it on audio. This book is a YA coming of age / romance about Pepper, and her family now has this national fast food chain called Big League Burgers, and the other protagonist is Jack, and his family owns a really mom and pop deli. They both live in New York, they both go to the same school, and they're actually talking to each other on this secret app, and they know each other, and they also are running the social media for their respective brands, and they get into a bit of a Twitter fight, and yeah, that's kind of the book. And I thought this book was really cute. I liked the characters, except for Pepper's mom, who sucks. She sucks. She's like, oh, Pepper, you're fine. You can run this national corporate brand Twitter. That's totally fine. That's not stressing you out at all. And she's like, it's stressing me out. I don't want this responsibility. And she's like, it's fine, Pepper. And I'm like, it's not fine, Mrs. Pepper. Like, it's not okay. So I was really frustrated with Emma's mom, but I did find the characters otherwise quite cute. And although there wasn't really a meet cute in this book because they already knew each other, is that what's up with the title? I thought this book was quite lovely, and of the YA contemporary books I've read lately, this was the best choice of the few that I've picked up. So I thought this one was really cute and I'd recommend it. The next book I read was One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. I give this 3 stars and I listened to it on audio. And what I did not like about this book was the characters. So we flipped a bit there. And that's because the characters feel like a freeform TV show where they're hiring upper 20-somethings to be high schoolers, if that makes sense. These characters didn't feel authentic to high school aged people, and maybe that's just because I didn't personally know high school age people like this when I was a high schooler, but I didn't really find them incredibly believable, and I didn't really connect to them. I didn't have a lot of connection points to them, so I found them to be a little, but I thought the mystery was kind of interesting. This one was a bit of a mixed bag for me. I probably won't continue on to the sequel. Also, all of her covers look the same. Whoever is designing the covers, I thought that there's like One of Us is Lying and there's One of Us is Next, and then there's Two Can Keep a Secret, but Two Can Keep a Secret is not a part of the series, but One of Us is Next is. But if you're linking 1, 2, anyway, this is maybe a rant for another video, but did not love One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. The next book I read was I'm Not Dying With You Tonight by Kimberly Jones and Jilly Segal. I also gave this book 3 stars and I listened to it on audio, and let me tell you, the audiobook narrators, Brittany Presley and Shani Waits, deserve all the awards because they brought such life to the characters of Campbell and Lena, our 2 narrating protagonists. Basically, this book takes place during a riot and they're attempting to kind of go home, but through a really convoluted way. And Lena and Campbell are not friends. They are not people that would typically associate with each other. Campbell is new in town. She's white. She feels very outside and very shy. And like the culture of this new town is different than where she used to live. Lena seems very confident. She's black. She's lived in this area for a long time. She has connections. She has a boyfriend. She's really cool. And so these 2 girls don't really go together in their social lives, but they end up having to team up to get out of this riot that has broken out at their football game. And they go through the town and ultimately they find some understanding with one another. And I thought this book was really interesting, but when I read it, I was hoping for some bigger themes and not just the individualized themes. And I was also had trouble picturing the layout of this town. But the narrators on the audiobook really showed me that this is a book that would make a great movie and that I would be really interested to see a movie because they just brought such life to these characters and you could see how alive these characters were and see how the stakes were so high for both of them. So I recently learned that this book did get optioned for a movie, so hopefully it becomes a movie and we can all go out to the theaters and see I'm Not Dying With You Tonight in the theaters because I think that would be really quite good. So yeah, I mean, this is one I'd recommend. I mean, I gave it 3 stars, but I definitely think it was a really interesting read. It was unlike a lot of things I read before. So yeah, this is one I'd recommend. The next book I read in June was Brightly Burning by Alexa Dawn. This is, get this you guys, a Jane Eyre retelling in space, I tell you. And I love space, I love science fiction, I also love Jane Eyre. These are just 2 truths about me. So when I heard about this book, I was like, I need it. And I read this one in print, as you can see, and I gave it 4 stars. Now, this book is weird because they're like wearing the traditional of the period garb. You know, they're wearing these long dresses with, you know, all the layers and fancy coats and stuff, but they're in space in the future. And so that's definitely like a hurdle to get over. I think it's a minor hurdle because it's weird enough that it works. But it's a hurdle, and it's really interesting to see how Alexa Dawn remixed the story of Jane Eyre to fit into this space kind of a thing. They all live on different ships. There's like ships to designate like US cities and countries around the world, and then there are private ships. So Stella's an engineer on the Stalwart, and she is applying to have a teacher position on private ships before she turns 18 and is stuck on the Stalwart. And so she gets a private teaching position on the Rochester, on the Rochester. So she goes to the Rochester. There's Lieutenant Poole, his name is Hugo Fairfax, and his sister is Jessa Fairfax. So you can see that the ways that they're playing with some of the characters and the names of places and things within Jane Eyre. And I thought that it was simple, it was predictable in a way, but that it was quite lovely and satisfying. They did get rid of the huge age gap, which I guess makes sense, and they made Jessa his sister rather than his daughter. Jane Eyre spoilers, I guess, kind of, maybe. And I mean, I just thought it was really interesting, and I was really pleasantly surprised by it, and I appreciated this Jane Eyre in space fix. So if you like Jane Eyre, if you like space, you might like Jane Eyre in space. The next book I read was Always and Forever Laura Jean by Jenny Han. I gave this book 3 stars. I listened to it on audio, and let me tell you, I loved the first To All the Boys I Loved Before movie. This is the 3rd book in that series, and I loved the movie, and that's what prompted me to read the books, but I've never loved the books. Laura Jean is written as like 16 in the first book, but she reads much younger. It's definitely like a lower YA kind of a book. If you're splitting the genre into like upper YA later teens versus like lower YA younger teens, definitely reads for lower YA. And I appreciate that, and I think I would have appreciated that as a, you know, a lower teen, but it did feel a bit young for me. But I kept reading because I wanted to know what happened, and I thought that this book was interesting. She's planning to go to college. She wants to go to college with Noah Centineo. I know it's not his character's name, but that's just what I'm gonna call him. He wants to go to college with Noah Centineo, and it doesn't really work out for her. And then there's this whole other plot with her dad and her neighbor, and like her dad and the neighbor are gonna get married. And I thought this book was nice and light and cute, but not super exciting to me. So I mean, it felt like a middle of the road read. I was glad to finish the series, but I also am not going to be talking about this series forever and ever. The next book I read, on the other hand, maybe a series that I will be dreaming about forever ever, is Star Wars Shadowfall by Alexander Freed. This is a book I gave 5 stars. This is the 2nd book in the Alphabet Squadron trilogy. I love these books. I love these books so much. The characters are such messes. They are ridiculous. They are just the worst. They're a mess, and they can't seem to get out of their messes, and like that sucks for them. But this book is definitely the darker middle chapter. They essentially, after the events of Alphabet Squadron, are coming together as a team, trying to set a trap for the First Order and Shadow Wing to come and to spring the trap, and then they can get them, but like it doesn't go so well for them, and then they all get split up and they're all dealing with their own stuff, and like, whew, ooh, there's some wild stuff happening in there, some great character development, weaknesses being exploited, a lot. I might do a whole review on it, but I did talk about it for an hour and a half on the Friends of the Force podcast with my friend Brad, so if you want to listen to me talk about all of these characters, all of the link for that will be in the description, because it's a fun time. We love Will Lark. That's all I have to say. We love Will Lark. So yeah, that's Shadowfall. Love that book. The next book I read was Cinderella Is Dead by Kaylin Barron. I gave this one 4 stars. I read it on ebook, and I thought this book was really interesting. It takes place 200 years after the life of Cinderella in the land where Cinderella lived, and the Cinderella story has been really critical at creating the culture of the land. And so Sophia, our narrator, she is 16. She has to go to the annual ball to get chosen by a man to be his wife and be submissive to him for the rest of time. And she realizes that she does not want that. She would like choice, she would like agency, and she would like to marry her best friend Erin. But without choice and agency, she has no power to do that. So she goes to the annual ball and she rebels. She runs away. And they kind of seek to topple this patriarchy. And I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was a very interesting way to remix the Cinderella story, and to kind of give a different look at the princess stories. And what I loved about this book is that it has a true revolutionary spirit, a rebel heart, and at the end it might be a little on the nose, it's definitely a little on the nose, but it really is revolutionary, is hopeful, and asks the reader to have hope that things can change. And that's Sophia's whole thing, is like, nobody else thinks that the system can change, and Sophia does. And she kind of goes on that journey to actually change it. And I think that's a really important message for our here and now, and also just for youth in general, because you know, you think about youth movements and the way that youth are fighting for, you know, their freedoms, their rights, and for a better future. And then you look at their parents, who are much more cynical, don't think that things can change, think that the structures work. And I think that that hope is something that we all need, and that we all need to really hold on to in order to continue that forward momentum of change. So I appreciated that message out of this book. I think overall the book is written well, it's fast-paced. This is one I'd recommend. It's very interesting. The one thing I would say about this book is I would trigger and content warning that the descriptions and just the talk of the patriarchy, the authoritarianism, the domestic abuse, all of these sorts of ideas are explicit within this book and were a little jarring to me at times, but that's something that really is not something you can deal with. I would not recommend this one. So the next book I read was The Tale of a Nagoon by Elie Wiesel. This is a book I picked up on NetGalley. It is a poem by Elie Wiesel that he wrote in the 1970s that looks like it's being published by his son, since Elie Wiesel passed a couple of years ago. And here I'm going to give you the definition of a nagoon. It is a Jewish religious song or tune sung by groups. It's vocal music, and often with repetitive sounds instead of formal lyrics. And so this story is about a rabbi in a ghetto, and the Nazis have said, you have to give us 10 names of 10 Jews to kill, or else we'll kill everybody. And so this rabbi hears about this, and he goes to all of the Jewish scholars and leaders kind of over the course of a night and consults them all, and he gets feedback from them, and ultimately has to make this terrible, horrible, hard, you know, decision for his ghetto, for the people of his ghetto. And I thought it was really interesting and also really educational. I'm not somebody who's Jewish, but I have read the work of Elie Wiesel before, and that's what attracted me to this book. I read the whole poem through, and when I didn't recognize a term, I went to the glossary at the end, and then I read the full glossary, and then I reread the whole poem. And if this is one that you see at the library or a bookstore come, you know, the end of the year, I would definitely pick it up and flip through it. The next book I read was How to Be an Antiracist by Ibram X. Kendi. This one I listened to on audio. It's read by Ibram X. Kendi. So I read both of the major Ibram X. Kendi books this month. They're both great. This one I really loved because it weaved the personal essay with the educational lesson. Each chapter kind of starts out with a definition, and then he kind of wraps this essay and the lesson all together. And I thought that it was really great to see his journey of anti-racist thinking and anti-racist work over his life and career. And it really, I think, showed the audience of readers that, you know, it's not like you're racist one day and you're anti-racist the next. It's not a flip of a switch. It is a journey. It is an active journey and process, and not a passive one. You know, you have to put in the work. And I thought it was really great to see that even Kendi says, you know, like, I did this thing wrong, and here's how my thinking made others kind of react to me. Here's why I did not get the support that I needed in this time, because I was approaching it the wrong way, or I was thinking about this thing in a certain way when that was not going to move me forward and move us forward. And so I thought that was really insightful and important, and I look forward to picking up this book in print copy and going through and annotating it, because there's definitely a lot there that I know I may have not picked up in the audio fully, so I'm really hoping to go back and annotate it. I will say that this one is read by the author and in the audiobook, and he's great because he does have a really passionate voice and like is really great at emphasizing his own work. But I will say that he also has like cadence that is not super easy to listen to if you listen to audiobooks really fast, because he's not a typical audiobook narrator who has a very metered, very slow cadence. He groups a couple words together at a time. So it was interesting to listen to. Easy to listen to once you got into it, but it took a moment. The next book I read was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins, the prequel to the Hunger Games trilogy. And this is the book that I kind of read everything. I first had a print copy, and then I had to give that back to my friend, and then I found an audiobook, and so I listened to the audiobook, and then I listened to more of the audiobook, and then I lost the audiobook, long story, and then I got the print copy and the audiobook from the library at the same time. So I finished it up, and I've done it. I've read the whole thing. I think that Santino Fontana is a really good narrator, but I have some complicated feelings on this book. I gave it 3 stars, and Miss Suzanne, what the heck? I love the Hunger Games trilogy. I'm not a huge rereader of books, but it's a series that I've reread. So that tells you how much I really like it. Catching Fire is bomb. I love that book. So good. But this book I was really confused about. One, it should have been 2 books. 2, Sejanus probably would have been a better main character because he was an outsider coming into the capital, and he seemed to have a lot of personal conflict. I didn't really feel strongly about Snow's character because I didn't believe him in his most brutal moments, and I also didn't believe him in his most empathetic moments. I thought that his possessiveness over Lucy Gray was infuriating and gross. So there's like a lot there's a lot of questions I have here. Why? I'm also frustrated. I didn't really love the movie Solo because it had a lot of unnecessary explanations for things, and I thought really unsatisfying explanations for things, like how Solo got his last name. I feel like the same thing happened in this book. They were like, how can we explain the Hunger Games? And they're like, oh yes, high schoolers made the games. High schoolers, you know, all those favorite parts of your games from the Hunger Games trilogy. High schoolers did it. And then like the Flickermans are still doing the same thing, and like the Heavensbees are doing the same thing, and like Lucy Gray really influenced the culture of District 12, like big time. So that really frustrated me, and I think it would have been more interesting had we heard it from Sejanus' point of view, but I've read it and it's over, and it happened it happened. I spent time on it. So the next book I read was John Lewis's March Book 1. So there are 3 of these, and this one is kind of the beginning portion of his life. I gave this 4 stars. This is a series that I'm really looking forward to finishing, and it was cool to read this graphic novel because I didn't know about the very beginning of his life and his upbringing before he started working with Snick. So this was really cool, and I thought it was a really great way to tell the story in the past and the present being Obama's inauguration. And so they kind of go into his office, and then some people come in, and then he's, oh, I'll tell you this story, and he kind of goes through his early life. And so I thought that was really clever and really neat, and I appreciated the way that it was told. It was very accessible, and I think easy to understand, and I look forward to finishing off this series. Hopefully we'll see it in July's wrap-up. The last book I read in the month of June was The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. I gave this book 4 stars. I read it on ebook, and let me tell you, Michael, I love Michael. He's the best. Michael for president, Michael for everything. Michael deserves good things. Stella also deserves all the good things. She is just the most lovely person. She's so sweet. So in this book, Stella is hoping to get better at sex, so she hires an escort who is Michael, and kind of devises a plan to get better at having sex so that she can have a boyfriend. And she ultimately devises a plan so that they can fake date. She'll pay him, she'll be his fake girlfriend, and he will be her practice boyfriend, and they fall in love. It's great. And I think this book is really good because Stella and Michael are both lovely. This has own voices, autistic representation, which I thought was really great. I thought it was really cool to see a character with autism, so that was really cool. And I just thought this book was really sweet, and I love the characters, and I love Michael. He's a tailor. He's a tailor. They're gonna wear nice clothes. I love it. This book was great. Really sweet. Made me big time smile. So that was my June on reading. There was a lot of it, but it was good. It was a good month of reading, and I'll continue to do these every month. So hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more from me. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.